Here is something that will make you uncomfortable. The person sitting next to you right now, the person you trust most in the world, the person you have built an entire life around, statistically speaking, is keeping something from you. Not necessarily something catastrophic, maybe something small. A feeling they haven't named yet. A thought they decided not to share. A version of themselves they only show when you're not in the room. And here is the part that should really bother you. That is not a modern problem. That is not a product of smartphones or dating apps or the particular psychological damage of living in the 21st century. That impulse, the one that makes humans hide parts of themselves even from the people closest to them, is ancient. It is older than language. It is older than marriage. It is older than any social rule ever invented to manage it. And the story of where it comes from is one of the most revealing things you will ever learn about what human beings actually are underneath everything we've built on top. So, did ancient humans have secret relationships? The honest answer is yes. Absolutely yes. But the more interesting question, the one that actually explains something about you and everyone you have ever loved, is why. Why, in a world with no privacy, no locked doors, no separate spaces of any kind, did humans still find ways to want things they weren't supposed to want? Why did the impulse exist before there were even rules to break? That is what we are going to find out. And the answer starts not with ancient humans at all. It starts with a problem that evolution had to solve about 200,000 years ago. Here is the situation. You are a Homo sapiens living in a group of approximately 30 to 50 people. This group is your entire world. There is no one outside it that you know personally. There is no city to disappear into, no stranger you will never see again, no anonymity of any kind. Every person in your group knows exactly what you did yesterday, who you spoke to, where you slept, what you ate, and roughly how you are feeling about all of it. Privacy as a concept does not exist. It cannot exist. The group is too small and too dependent on mutual surveillance to allow it. Everyone watches everyone because in a world where a single person making a bad decision could get the whole group killed, watching each other is survival. And yet, inside that group, underneath all that surveillance, humans were still developing internal lives that nobody else could see. Feelings they didn't express. Attractions they didn't act on. Preferences they kept to themselves. The interior of the human mind was becoming, for the first time in evolutionary history, a private space. Not because anyone chose it, because the brain had become complex enough to contain one. This is the thing that most people miss when they think about ancient humans. We imagine them as simple, transparent, driven by obvious needs. But the cognitive revolution that produced modern humans somewhere between 100,000 and 200,000 years ago didn't just give us language and tools and the ability to plan for the future. It gave us the ability to think one thing and say another, to feel something and choose not to show it, to want what we are not supposed to want and be aware enough to know we should not say so. Deception, including self-serving social deception, did not arrive with civilization. It arrived with consciousness. And once it arrived, it never left. Now let's get specific. Because the archaeology here is genuinely fascinating and almost nobody talks about it. One of the most significant things researchers have found when studying ancient burial sites is evidence of preferential treatment. Bodies buried with more objects than others. Individuals placed in more central or elevated positions within the gravesite. Signs of being cared for over long periods. Healed bones suggesting someone set and tended the fracture. Dental wear suggesting someone else chewed food for them when they couldn't. In a society where everyone was supposedly equal, where there were no formal hierarchies, some people were clearly more valued than others. Some people had relationships with other specific people that went beyond what the official social structure recognized or required. Researchers studying a burial site in Moravia, in what is now the Czech Republic, dating to roughly 30,000 years ago, found something that stopped them completely. Two individuals buried together. Not just near each other. Together. Facing each other. With objects placed between them that suggested a deliberate shared identity. But here is the detail that matters. Based on the position of the burial within the larger site, and the objects found with it, these two individuals did not obviously belong together by the social logic of the group. They were not the most prominent members. They were not placed in the central burial area. They were placed slightly apart, slightly separate, as if someone had made a decision about where they should be that was not purely governed by their social status. Someone decided these two people belonged together in death. And that decision had feeling behind it. Specific, personal, possibly complicated feeling. We cannot know what their relationship was. That is the honest answer. We cannot know. But we can look at what we know about human behavior, about the brain, about the social structures of the time, and we can say with reasonable confidence that not every relationship ancient humans had was sanctioned, visible, or simple. Here is why that matters. In a group of 30 to 50 people, pair bonding was not just personal. It was political. Who you bonded with affected the alliances of the entire group. It affected who hunted with whom, who shared food with whom, who would defend whom in a conflict. Relationships in the ancient world were not private matters between two people. They were social infrastructure, which means any relationship that fell outside the expected structure, any attraction that crossed the wrong lines, any feeling that didn't fit the arrangement the group needed, had to be managed, had to be hidden, had to exist somewhere underneath the visible social surface. This is where it gets interesting and slightly uncomfortable. Genetic evidence has been quietly building a picture over the last 2 decades that most popular histories of ancient humans don't include. Ancient DNA studies analyzing the genomes of individuals from prehistoric burial sites across Europe, Asia, and Africa have revealed patterns of relatedness within ancient communities that do not match what a simple, transparent, everyone pairs off neatly social structure would produce. There is evidence of what geneticists carefully call extra-pair paternity in ancient populations, which is the scientific way of saying that the person raising a child was not always the person who fathered it. This was not rare. It was not an anomaly. It appears across multiple populations, multiple time periods, multiple continents. The gap between the official social structure and what was actually happening was not a modern invention. It was a consistent feature of human social life reaching back as far as the genetic record goes. Let that sit for a moment. Ancient humans living in groups with essentially zero privacy, under constant mutual observation, with pair bonding arrangements that were social and political and not merely personal, were still finding ways to want things outside those arrangements and sometimes to act on those wants. Without apps, without hotels, without any of the infrastructure modern humans use for this. Just the same impulse, the same internal private space that the brain had developed, and the same human capacity for wanting what you are not supposed to want. Now here's the question that the data raises and that nobody quite wants to answer directly. Was this destructive? The assumption is yes. The assumption is that secret relationships in ancient communities would have been catastrophic, that the group would have fallen apart, that the social structure would have collapsed, and sometimes it probably did. We know from studying contemporary small-scale societies, groups that live in ways structurally similar to how ancient humans lived, that relationship conflicts are among the most common sources of violence and group fracture. People have always been willing to do serious damage over this. But something else is also true. The groups survived. The species survived. The same brain that was producing these hidden wants and hidden relationships was also producing the capacity to manage them, to contain them, to maintain the surface of the social structure while the interior was more complicated. This is not a flattering portrait of human nature, but it is an accurate one, and accuracy is more interesting than flattery. Here is what nobody tells you about ancient human social life. The official structure was never the whole story. The visible relationships were never all the relationships. In every human community that has ever been studied at every point in history and prehistory that we can access, there has always been a gap between the public social surface and the private interior, between what people showed the group and what they actually felt, between the relationship that served the social function and the relationship that served the person. That gap is not a flaw in human nature. It is a feature of it. It is what happens when you give a deeply social animal a private interior life. The social animal needs to maintain its position in the group. The private interior needs things the group may not sanction. And the result is what humans have always been. Creatures who live on two levels simultaneously, the visible and the hidden, the official and the actual, the relationship everyone knows about and the feeling nobody does. This did not start with civilization. Civilization just gave it more infrastructure. The ancient human hiding a feeling from their group 50,000 years ago had no word for what they were doing. They had no framework for understanding why they wanted what they wanted or why they knew instinctively that showing it would cost them something. They just knew, the way you know, the same quiet internal calculation, the same awareness that some things belong to you and only you, that some feelings are not safe to make visible, that the gap between what you show and what you feel is sometimes not dishonesty but survival. You inherited that from them. Every person you have ever known inherited it. It is the oldest thing about us that we never talk about. And it was there long before anyone had a rule to break or a secret to keep. It was there the moment the brain became complex enough to have an inside.